Hello, everyone. I'm Sai, and welcome to this dialogue with the leading supporters of BPUR International to promote our global campaign to enact an international treaty to ban the political use of religion. Today, I will be speaking with Dr. Azza Karam. Dr. Azza, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's a pleasure, Sai.
So, a brief introduction for those who might not be familiar with you. You were a prominent official at the UN, founding and chairing many agencies around the world around religion and human rights, such as the Multi-Faith Advisory Council. You served as Secretary General of the World Conference of Religions for Peace, and you're currently President and CEO of the Women's Learning Partnership and a member of the United Nations Secretary General High-Level Advisory Board on Multilateralism. You're also a lecturer, author, and recipient of many prestigious awards. And that's just a quick summary. I'd implore anyone to check out our website, bpur.org, for a full bio. Of course, you're also an ambassador for BPUR International. So how did you initially get involved with BPUR, and why did you feel like this was a cause that was worthy of your time?
Well, thank you very much, Sai. That was actually a really generous introduction. I was not a prominent official in the UN. I was one of many foot soldiers within the United Nations system. I had the privilege of working to co-create a United Nations interagency task force on religion and development, as well as obviously what you mentioned, the Multi-Faith Advisory Council thereof. So I just wanted to make sure that that's clear, no big position in the system. Just wanted also to pinpoint that it was that experience of working multilaterally with different religions, in addition to my own studies for many, many years now, that alerted me to the fact that we basically have a problem when religion and politics mingle. Of course, they have to coexist. Of course, religions are part of our cultures, even in secular culture, that is an approach and an attitude towards religion. So there's no such thing as religions don't exist. They're in fact the origin and the original institutions that humankind knew so long before we had governments and the United Nations and so many other institutions as we know them. We've always had religious institutions. Long before we had the UN Development Program, we've had religious NGOs providing human development services to millions of people around the world. So the original infrastructure of our human societies has always been religious. I can see that, anyone can see that, and it doesn't require genius to observe. Now, does that mean that religions should be part of political processes? Only insofar, I believe, as religions need to be the public conscience that holds any form of governance accountable. But holding accountable is not the same as being political themselves. There's a big difference between those two spaces. In an ideal setting, we need all faiths, all religious institutions in any one country, in every country, to come together to act as the conscience of the governance system and infrastructure, to help civil society to be part of the civic space that holds governance and governments accountable to that which they are meant to be accountable for, which is the human rights and dignity of the individuals and the world. That includes our planetary context. Holding accountable and working within civil society is a very different thing than becoming politically operative, than being used politically, or indeed using the political. So that difference, I believe, isn't quite clear to a number of different politicians, perhaps, and certain governments who feel that religion needs to be part of the political domain and infrastructure. Usually, in 99.9% of those cases, it's one religion that has this relationship with the political infrastructure. It's never all religions in any national context, which come together to have this relationship. So because it is one religion, we cannot avoid the instrumentalization of religious using the political and political using the religious. It's the one religion. It's extraordinarily difficult to instrumentalize a whole group of religions together. When religions come together in any one context, they are very powerful because it is the sum total of human aspiration. It is the ultimate means of holding accountable, of nurturing spirit and soul. But very rarely in situations, in fact, it's never happened, in situations where political regimes, individuals, parties try and in fact do take religion as one of their vehicles, it's usually one religion that they will take as one of their vehicles, which immediately and per definition creates divisiveness and schisms in that community, because there is not a single society anywhere in the world that is only all belonging to one religion. So it is a very divisive tool and element. And that is why I think it's extremely important to be able to support the cause of BPUR, because we have come to a point in our human history, again, because history has a delightful way of replicating itself. We've come to a point again where there is significant religious manipulation of the political and political manipulation of the religious. And they're in bed together. And we need to make sure that that's not the case, because that is harm. That spells harm. And history has many examples of that harm.
That leads me really well onto my next question. Because this is such a tumultuous issue, BPUR kind of has to tread very carefully when it comes to this issue about, not antagonizing any one religion or singling out any one religion or country. How do you feel BPUR's, as an ambassador, approach to this issue can succeed navigating this issue where other prior attempts might have failed?
So I'm not aware of prior attempts that had the same objective globally and were worked on so diligently for many years. I'm not aware of any prior attempts. I actually think that one of BPUR's advantages is that this is actually a new initiative that is, in a sense, forced by the circumstances that we are in, that trend that we are seeing of instrumentalization of religion and politics. So no previous attempts. This is new. I think we're charting new territories. Now, that doesn't mean that there are not many out there, whether on the political or the financial or the social, the cultural, whatever sphere of life, who are quite aware that this is a need. In fact, there are many historians, academics, politicians, even plenty who are aware that wait, something is not right here. We need to think about this, and we need to do things different. I think what we're learning, right? Because it's a new endeavor that is global in nature. What we're learning is that there are many tensions. Absolutely. I mean, when you see a couple marrying and you decide to speak up against it, it's going to be a problem. You're going to be creating quite a few enemies in the process. And I think that's what is likely to happen. There is no way that this is going to be a smooth process. You cannot detangle relationships founded in common interests, especially at a time when there are no existing rules and laws that help detangle that, with the exception of certain constitutions, which are conveniently ignored in some parts of the world. And there is no way that you can detangle interest-based relationships without significant challenges. So I think it's smart and wise, and actually no other choice but to understand that there will be sensitivities on all sides. No one politician wants to admit that they're using the religious arguments for their own sake. Some do. And usually then when that happens, you realize things have gone way, way, way beyond the line, so to speak. But generally, religious leaders try to say that they're all for the common good and all for the public good, and they're not really wanting to sway things this way or that way. But even that trend I see diminishing and declining. So yes, it is sensitive, but ultimately, if we still can, and I'm not just talking about people involved with BPUR, but generally, if humanity still wishes to not go over that brink and fall into a very dark abyss indeed, then I think we have no choice but to begin to see what we need to stay safe and away, not just not jump, not just not be thrown into the abyss, but actually stay significantly away from the abyss. If humanity is committed to that, we have no option but to make sure that we can continue to convince and to secure that those governments still committed to human rights, to democracy, to honorable service of their communities and their people, to the common good for all people beyond the nation state. If there are still governments like that, then those are the ones that we need to work with, who should be the champions of something like this, because this is quintessentially for the common good. You can't prioritize one religion over another in this country, one religion over another in that country, and think this is what this country stands for. This country stands for this religion, this country stands for that religion, and not expect hell to ensue. It's a deeply illogical way of thinking.
I'd like to bring back to just one thing that you had mentioned about laying rules, groundwork, indisputable rules that make it very difficult for governments to kind of dispute. Otherwise, it kind of reflects poorly upon them, you know. I think that that's kind of a very important thing that BPUR is trying to push forward, is these kind of objective rules that hold these governments to account for infringement. And we're doing really well. BPUR is now on the international agenda, and it's anticipating imminent state adoption and supporting resolution in the Council of Europe. How do you see the next steps forward for BPUR?
It will not be sufficient. It is wonderful but insufficient to have the backing of any one region. This is an effort that requires multilateral support. So that means more than one country, more than one region, even, especially because I think we do have a very, I hate to use the terms, but we are at a moment where certain religiously inclined countries and indeed cultures are seeing evil in one another, are seeing bad in the other. This was referred to some years ago as a clash of civilizations. Now, I've hated that terminology, but somehow it has become manifest in a way that is deeply disturbing and hard to ignore, which is precisely why I think we're at this brink, and we need to go back from that. So we can't afford to have only one kind of genre of religious political support. We need to make sure that we're looking at multilateral support. So that means it has to come from nations which are predominantly Muslim, nations which are predominantly Hindu, nations which are predominantly Buddhist, nations which are predominantly Christian. It needs to come from governments that have to manage different kinds of cultural, read also religious dynamics. So I am incredibly impressed with Dr. Salam's efforts so far to have actually brought in an incredibly big heavyweight of a player, which is the Council of Europe. I think that now enables and also necessitates that there are other countries from the global south who can be co-partners and co-creators of that process to arrive at the treaty.
Thank you. Last question, and this one's a personal one. How do you personally aim to promote this mission and contribute further in these exciting new upcoming phases?
Having agreed to become an ambassador for this mission essentially means that I see the need and the value added of making sure that as many people as possible from my circle of colleagues and friends are aware of this, because sometimes all you need is that collective awareness, that collective consciousness, and then each takes it further in their own spheres of influence. So I am committed, and I already have actually notified a significant number of the people I've worked with, colleagues, friends, in different areas, governmental, non-governmental, and intergovernmental. I've already shared the information so wonderfully prepared by Dr. Salam. And I see that as a key part of the role of ambassador. Should there be any specific effort that requires the ambassadors to come together, I am ready, willing, and able to consider those efforts.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Azza, for your time, and thank you for speaking to me. It was a complete pleasure.
Likewise. Absolutely likewise, Sai. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your devotion to this cause, and thank you so much for everyone for watching, and we will speak again soon.